Hello Wales, I'm from England. Don't hold that against me. A couple of hours drive down from Birmingham. And want to say thanks to Dawn. I came last year. I give talks on lots of different topics. We'll go into that in a second. But I came last year. I do have a personal interest in helping people with issues around mental health. And I do emphasize and stress that because I have mental health, you have mental health, we all have mental health. And a little bit of a pet hate of mine, and I'll explain why. I think the importance of language and using correct terms changes the way people think about things and understand things. So when people say, I have mental health, let's just switch that around. Would you say, I have physical health? And if you did, would you consider that to be a positive or a negative thing? I have physical health. Oh, great. You're healthy. I have mental health. Oh, no. How bad is that? Why is it automatically negative? I have issues with mental health. I have poor mental health. I have mental illness, which we'll see in a second is different. I think we need to reframe and start using the correct language for a start. But part of my interest when it comes to issues around mental health is veterans and those serving. So Andy, who now lives not far from here, I won't say where because being the fine figure he is, I know you ladies will be queuing up outside his door. He's very single. I mean, like, desperately single. But he's not far from here. In Skewen, actually, I'll give you his address later. And he served 24 years in the army, came out as a warrant officer. I, on the other hand, paid attention at school, so I was in the Royal Air Force as an aircraft weapons technician, known as an armourer, and help out with veterans with numerous things, including issues around mental health. So today's talk is going to touch on some of the things that may help those and optimize your mental health. So there was a little thing in Suzanne's talk was fantastic. I was really flattered at the end, kind of confused. I had a little picture with her and she went, I know you, I recognise you from somewhere. I said, I think I would have remembered that. But the one thing she put on the flip chart, and I totally get it, and it's a term we all use, is well-being. Let me say that a different way. Well-being. So if you look at my website, gbfitness.com, quick plug there, it will talk about optimal being. And why don't we strive for being optimal in our physical health, in our mental health, in our thoughts, our actions, our fitness, whatever it might be. And there's a difference. Now, medical intervention can deal with issues. But I'm sure you've all heard the term prevention is better than cure. But sometimes that requires obviously skilled, experienced practitioners and professionals. But there are many things that we know now, and I've been doing this for 30 years, that we didn't know 5-10 years ago. So I'm going to touch on some of the things that may influence your physical and mental health, including a little snippet on genetics, and we're talking about epigenetics, nutrigenomics. I'm not talking about whether you're 0.5% Viking and 2% African and this, that, and the other. I don't do the National Geological stuff. I do the stuff to do with health. Also looking at exercise, also looking at nutrition. These are the things that have been touched on. Suzanne did a great job and other speakers are talking about those things. So there obviously may be an overlap because those things are important. So I've done lots of work over 30 years. As I said, I was in the Air Force and then I came out. Being an armourer, a weapons technician. I had a tattoo done just to remind me of what I used to do, which was bombs, explosives, missiles, tornado aircraft, ejection seats. There's not much call for that in Civvy Street. So I came out, went to America, travelled around for a few months, went to the old Venice Beach, saw all the big lads getting the attention. I was a tall streak of you-know-what, and decided I wanted to start training and just work on my physical look. Pure vanity, really. But I'm the kind of person who wants to know how, why, what, when, where. I'm all about detail. So over the last 30 years, I've studied, I've got a master's degree and an NLP master practitioner, phlebotomist. I do microbiome work for advanced stool testing, as I said, genetic testing, a lot of hormone stuff. So ironically, I do a lot of work with andropause, menopause, IVF, fertility, and all sorts. And I've trained lots and lots and lots of different athletes. Again, looking at optimal performance, but a big brief to myself. One of my values, to pick up on what Suzanne was saying, is that they do it in a healthy way for their mind and their body. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides to show you what can go wrong if people are overtraining. So going to Dawn's talk a little earlier, she was talking about burnout, and one of the things somebody actually on the table right there, pointing, said sport and overtraining and exercise. And ironically, many people, when they feel stressed with their work, home life, whatever circumstances, find solace in the gym or running the hills or doing whatever. And sometimes that's a big, bad mistake, because you put yourself in a hole. You're already depleted, maybe emotionally, and then you charge through at the gym or doing boot camps or whatever it might be, and you empty yourself physically. So Andy was one of those. I didn't tell him I was going to say this, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but adrenal testing, looking at the function of your central nervous system controlling and adapting to stress. I'll show you some slides. And Andy was a PTI, Royal Army PT Corps. So for 24 years, he had to be the epitome of fitness. So he could beat the younger lads and ladies. And it's lead by example in the forces. So he has run and press-upped and burped himself into the ground. So when he came out, and we've known each other for years, he was a student of mine, so I teach award-winning courses in PT, nutrition and stuff. And although he'd done 24 years in the army as a top warrant officer PT, he realised there was things missing in his knowledge because, it's a bit blinkered in the forces. And when he came out, and I'd speak to him on the phone regularly. It's like, what have you done today? I've done a bit of phys, I've been running, I've been swimming. I go down and visit him and we go cold water dipping in the rivers and crazy stuff like that. But I'm like, your adrenals are fried, mate. I've told you to take some time off. And this wasn't a guess. This wasn't just looking at him and assuming he's burnt out. This was doing proper physiological tests, measuring something called cortisol and a daily pattern of, not a blood spot in the morning. And it took close to a year to rectify essentially what he / the forces had done. Not in a bad way, not intentionally, but it happens. And I deal with elite athletes, world champions, world record holders, who have no idea how poor their physical and emotional health is. Because as long as they're performing and winning medals, they're happy. But very often there's a big price to pay. And I'll show you one slide from, it was a young lady who was in the British cycling team. And she's been retired from, British athletics and cycling because she did some athletic stuff as well, for over 15 years. And she's never recovered. She's just never recovered, and she probably never will. And we found it out because I was teaching her. She was one of my students. We did a test, and it was one of the worst results I've ever seen. With her permission, her name won't be on it, but I'll show you the slide. So, as I said, ex-forces, won English Veteran of the Year. I know it's English Veteran of the Year, but if it helps, I did wear my kilt to the award ceremony when I won it in Bristol because I was born in Scotland. So just to confuse them, why this English guy is wearing a kilt. So if you want to do your kind of social media tagging, I'm not really a social media influencer or anything like that. It's a bit of a pet hate. I call it unsocial media most of the time. It's great when you use it, but I think people, get engulfed in it. But if you want to tag and do bits and bobs, I'm happy with that. So, what is mental health? Well, essentially, we all have it, as I said, and it's the state you're in emotionally, physiologically, and social. And we're going to touch on that. That was a great point of community that Suzanne was talking about. And I'll talk about a little bit about, because it's quite emotional for some people, and some people had a great experience in all the lockdowns. I'll be honest, I enjoyed it, because I've got 2 young sons, 8 and 12. And doing the homeschooling and spending more time with them, for me, was fantastic. Because there was a term Suzanne again used. It was great watching her, delivering presentation, because one of my slides will talk about your happy place. And my sons are my happy place. I've tried the marriage and divorce twice. I'm done with that. I'll stick with the kids. Okay? And being at home with them was fantastic. And I'll be honest, personally helped my mental health. Now, had I been in isolation without them, because I'm used to doing professional speaking and teaching and working one-to-one with clients, and that all just collapsed. I do blood work. I can't do blood work if I can't go in the same room or house with somebody. I've got to be within inches of you. Well, not even that. I'm putting the needle in your arm. So, mental illness is something that's different, and people don't differentiate enough. And what we're looking at there is something that is diagnosable and treatable. Now, be that medication, be it talking therapy, whatever. But we all have fluctuations in our mental health, as we do our physical health. But when we look at the stats, I'm not going to read them all out because they're quite terrifying. I'm very much into evidence-based stuff when I teach, so there will be references here. If this is an area that you work in and you want any of these references, feel free to take a photo of the screen or email me, and I'll send a copy of the relevant slide over. Because when we're talking about stuff, and especially scientific stuff, remember two things. One, where's the evidence? Two, it's always changing. It's always changing. But we see lots of statistics that have worsened massively since this worldwide pandemic. But we always, as I said, are in a state of flux. You have a bad day, your mood, your enthusiasm, that willpower, that consistency, whatever it might be, can go downhill. So we shift towards a lower state of mental well-being. But when we start holding on to that, or it overcomes us, it can develop. And there are certain, neurodiversity, kind of issues, conditions, which are linked with, increased depression, anxiety and the like. And I do a lot of work in that area as well. If we're getting a clinical diagnosis and it's considered treatable, we're looking at mental illness. A lot of people are stuck out in the wilderness with poor mental health. And very often, it's a matter of they just put up with it. It's just me. Well, there might be a couple of answers today as, why is that you? Why can, when our brave boys and girls get sent off to probably another unjust war, why does some come back and absolutely just slide back into civilian life and others are traumatised for the rest of their lives? And I work with veterans who, when maybe you do their genetic markers known as single nucleotide polymorphisms, what makes us different basically, known as SNPs, there's explanations there. And it really helps sometimes to understand, well, why do I feel anxiety? My best friend who's been in the same situation doesn't. It's not you're broken anyway, it's who you are. And when you're aware of that, maybe you'll see the warning signs. Maybe you need to take more time away from, be it exercise or whatever it is. Maybe you need to change your job or your partner. Yeah? So, there's an awful lot of stigma. People tend to go into self-isolation. They feel they're a bother to other people, so therefore maybe don't seek the help that they need. Obviously, abuse, trauma, neglect, social disadvantage, finance. Lots of people, me and Andy were just talking about that literally before we started talking, because, he's out of the army and he did 24 years, he gets a pension, but he's talking about just taking off to Thailand or something because, in his words, well, I don't have to wear any clothes, so I don't have to buy any clothes. Eating is really cheap. I don't need to pay for heating. Basically, he's tight. But, cost of living, people are really challenged at the moment, and that increases anxiety and worry. That's going to link in with unemployment, losing your job, and a lot of other things. Huge cost to the economy. So if some of you are working in helping people with their mental health in the workplace, because that's taken over from what was, 15, 20 years ago, the number one excuse for being off work was a bad back. Now it's, I just can't take it, I can't come into work, everything's getting to me. And it's justified, it's real. It's harder to assess, so, there might be people abusing the system a little bit, but it's very real. And at least it's being recognised now, which I think is important. So, interestingly, some of these, if you were in Suzanne's talk, you will have just seen, because that community, that connect, was one thing that was removed from us. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the science of the brain, and there's a neurotransmitter, it's a type of neurotransmitter, actually regenerates brain tissue and plasticity called BDNF. And one of the best ways to improve and influence that is to connect with others, which was removed from us for years. So I made a real big thing about being on Zoom and chatting to people, and a good friend of mine was diagnosed with something quite serious. Like every Friday we'd be on Zoom, be our side, he's ex-forces as well, and he's like, mate, we've got to talk about this because you're locked away, I'm locked away. I only see my children, as I said, divorced twice, a couple of days a week, which is amazing. And that's why we picked a Friday. I was like, we need to connect. Both of us need to, keep some connection. So connect is really important. Be active. So I'm going to talk about the importance of movement. So it doesn't have to be going to the gym, wearing your best lycra and nowadays putting your tripod on and filming yourself for 3 hours. I don't understand that. When I used to go to the gym years ago, because I was really into all that stuff, that didn't happen. The world's changing far too much for my liking. Keep learning. So as I said, I'm always studying and always sharing because science moves at such a quick rate. Give to others. And it really is sharing and giving back, and then being mindful, which a lot of people will have covered in detail today. So there's a little bit on each of those. If you want to take a picture of the slide, as I said, or you should all have handouts. So on the handouts, you're going to see there's another slide, Cain's top 10 tips. So number 1, drink more water, which I'm going to do because while I'm chatting, I don't want to get dry and start coughing. Over half of your body weight. So for the females in the room, approximately 50 to 60% of your body weight. For the guys, 55 to 65% is water. Anybody want to tell me why men generally have better hydration and more water in their body? Anyone? Andy? Why do men generally have more water?
A bit more muscle mass. No.
See the importance of language. On average, the average person in the street, without the influence of their sport and training, generally the male structure will have more muscle upon it. But if I look at some of my athletes, they're going to have an awful lot of muscle on a female or male frame, respectively. And that's what we need to start doing, is working with detail, because I measure people's body composition. I don't do body mass index, height to weight ratio. How much muscle do you have? How much water do you have? How much fat do you have? And then, for your chosen passion, sport, whatever, is that appropriate? Because if I've got a muscular male or female, say they're bodybuilders, their hydration should be way more than the average. And there's a lot of this detail lost because, especially on social media, everyone's an expert now because they've been to the gym twice. They've never read a book on anatomy and physiology or energy systems or biomechanics or any of that good stuff. And we invest in them. So there's a lot of misinformation. So please, number 10 on your list is consistency. Again, Suzanne covered that. But that's only going to work if the script is right. So employ a professional. Your health really should be a huge priority in your life, physical and mental. And that is a better investment than the fancy glittery shirt, which will be relevant in a little bit, or the car, or the house. Because when you get diagnosed with something, hopefully not, but, serious, it's amazing how many people reevaluate their lives and realise what they've worked for so hard has put them potentially toward that ill health. And it's not worth it. So find your happy. That's my happy. That's my little Freddie and his big brother Oscar. And they really are. And I know every parent in the world says this. But from some of the things, I honestly don't believe I would be here if it wasn't for them. And I'm going to make sure I'm the best best me for them that I can be. Because, children do look up to their parents and other adults as, examples and role models, and if you've got kids, you'll know they pick up on everything. So working on yourself is helping them. And if that's your drive, because very often we don't value ourselves enough, but we might value our children or our spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend, mum, dad, whatever, then find what is going to inspire you to be a better, healthier you with consistency. Because you matter. You really do matter. And I want to say this because sometimes you look in the mirror and we don't matter to ourselves, but we matter to other people. So if there's people around you that you love and they love you, do it for them. Just find a reason to do it. Please just find a reason to improve your health, your longevity, because the modern world is working against us. We don't sleep enough, and that's not just hours, that's quality of sleep. If you've got a sleep tracker, you'll know about things like REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. So it's not hours in bed. You can go to bed for 10 hours and wake up feeling wiped because your brain is just wired all the time. Far too much time in front of screens. Convenience. Ting! Meals. I've literally just had, and ironically, unbelievably, from a student of mine that next week he's doing his exam, his written exam, which is, for the courses I teach, are very in-depth. It's probably a 6-7 hour written paper, and I'm not exaggerating, am I? Huge. The record for the PT course is 8 hours, 40 minutes for a written paper. I'm the only training provider in the UK that does a written exam, by the way. So when you're hiring your PTs at the gym, they might look fantastic. Every single one of them has only done a tick box quiz, probably online, multiple choice, multiple guess. And people say, can't you do a simpler exam? I go, you know what, I've done this for 30 years. And when people come up to me in the gym and say, that machine over there, is it A, for your latissimus dorsi, B, your pectoralis major, C? No. They ask a question, they want a detailed answer. So it is in the detail, but we want convenience in life with, and I love sitting down and watching a movie. I've got a nice little surround sound home cinema type thing, if you like, at home, and that's my wind down the days I don't have my little ones. And that's important, but I'll be honest, I've got into this, I think they call it doom scrolling thing, just sitting there sometimes aimlessly looking through social media, and I'm like, I don't even like social media. I don't post that much. I'm just looking at other people's naff content. But do that in the evening, and what are you saying? And Andy was actually just saying this, he's doing listening to podcasts and doing research on circadian rhythms, like dark cycles and stuff. And you can kid yourself that looking at a phone or a laptop or a tablet at 10 o'clock at night isn't going to do any harm, but your brain thinks it's daytime. Because in daylight, and we should be doing this outside, you would be synthesizing this amazing neurotransmitter, brain hormone, if you like, called serotonin. Except most of that serotonin is made in your gut, 90% of it. So that's where a healthy digestive system influences your mood and emotion. It's called the gut-brain axis. And then at night, the levels of serotonin influence the changeover to melatonin. And you start producing melatonin, which is your brain's way of saying, it's nighttime, it's bye-bye time, go to sleep. And then you look at your phone, boom, the melatonin disappears. You eat something, boom, the melatonin disappears. You have some alcohol, boom, the melatonin disappears. All of these things are just going to wipe it out. And I'm not saying be an angel, because I'm not. I'm saying be aware of what's actually happening, and then it's up to you. You're informed on whether you want to influence it, or watch Mobland with a glass of wine, munching on a bag of crisps. And you will wreck your sleep, I promise. We can't control everything. It's a really tough lesson for most of us to learn. But what you can control, take your time and do it in line with your values. Because I'm very much a giver and a people person, and to be honest, it's cost me a lot of energy and a lot of money and everything else, frustration over the years. And as we get older, I think we start evaluating about what's important to us, because maybe you've got more years behind you and you want to make sure the years ahead of you are going to be happy and important to you. Because progress, happiness, wealth, success, whatever labels you want to put on things, isn't always a straight line. At the end of the day, if you get there but it's a bit twisty-turny, guess what? You're still there. And this thing about fall down 6 times, get up 7, learn by your mistakes and experiences, abso-bloody-lutely. But we all beat ourselves up. Okay, maybe you don't. I beat myself up over things if I don't do it excellently, perfectly. But that's me, you know, partly the way I grew up. And, you know, when you're in the forces, we've got the 6 Ps. Who knows what the 6 Ps are?
Planning, prevents,
yeah, proper preparation, proper planning, exactly. Supposedly, I'm probably going to get the hours wrong, but Abraham Lincoln said if I was going to cut down a tree and I had 7 hours, I'd spend 6 hours sharpening the axe. But we rush into things and we want to get it done now. But maybe we're too hard on ourselves, and time out is really important. Dawn earlier was saying about recharging a battery. Don't wait until it's dead. Don't wait until you've flatlined your adrenals. But sometimes the influence is something, in a way, you can't do anything about, although you can influence your genes, obviously. But that is who you are. That's how you're made. And we are all amazing, and we are all very, very different. Way more different than height and colour and hair colour and eye colour and stuff. When you start studying genes and the influence of the environment, epigenetics, and the influence of nutrition, nutrigenomics and the like, you can influence your mood. You can influence, you know, your thoughts. You can influence your health. But unless you've done the background work, i.e. testing, you'll never know. And it's really quite complex. I started studying that 11 and a half years ago. A good friend of mine, Amara Cadogan, who's world renowned. I brought him over from Copenhagen, Denmark, and we were teaching a load of doctors. And yeah, I've done his course 3 times, and I've just done another course with another company over 3-4 months, because there's always new things being found. But in short, I took this picture. It was down in London. I don't know if any of you have heard of a guy called Professor von Hagen's Body Worlds. Dead bodies with the skin taken off them and plastinated. Bit weird for people, but because I teach anatomy and physiology, I'm fascinated. So you go and pick up and you look at, basically, strip the skin off someone, draw all the fluid out of them, and you see all the muscle fibres and their organs, and it's a bit weird. It freaks some people out. But I'm a bit weird and I like it. So, genes influence about 50% of your thoughts that influence this amazing thing called happiness. And then the circumstances, you know, your job, the people around you, etc. Stuff you can control is less than half. Sometimes you maybe just go with it. Maybe just accept it. Because we get frustrated that other people have an influence on our thoughts and lives. Well, if you can cut them out, great, but you can't always do that. So just go with the flow. This is a diagram just showing some of these genes and associated things called SNPs. This is an amazing test called DNA Mind. So there are lots of companies doing it. Please be careful about which ones you invest in with share of data and stuff. There's a big scandal going on with the American company 23andMe. I wouldn't touch any of those. The ones I work with don't work with consumers, as in the general public, and it's a way of protecting them because things can be misconstrued, so they only work through practitioners. Because imagine you get a gene that potentially raises your potential for cancer or heart disease or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. And notice I said the word potential twice there very purposely, because that's exactly what it is. It doesn't mean this will happen. There's no guarantees. If I take somebody's blood and see certain markers, well, you've got high CRP, C-reactive protein, so there's definitely inflammation. And then we look into it. But because you've got a SNP or a gene influence, doesn't mean that will happen. What it means is you are aware of it, and maybe you want to change your lifestyle and influence the action of those genes. Does that make sense? Because there's a lot of talk about MTHFR all over social media. That's one fraction. It is important. But the people touting these things are salesmen, because to only talk about that shows a massive misunderstanding of how we can influence it and other effects of other SNPs that are associated with it. So in fact, COMT, methyltransferase enzyme, is an enzyme that breaks down catecholamines. I'll say that in plain English. When you get really wound up and your adrenaline is going through the roof, do you stay stuck there and angry all day? Or do you go, Whoosh. Okay? Let the moment pass and just calm down. And guess what it is that helps you calm down? It's that COMT gene. It breaks down the adrenaline or the dopamine or whatever else. And some people have a fast COMT, that's a term we use, or a slow COMT. The slow COMT people get stuck in angry or hypervigilance, and it's linked massively to PTSD, which isn't always, combat. It's family situations, childhood trauma, domestic abuse, whatever. But it's why some people really suffer long term, because they get stuck in a state. And it's easy to say, change your state. I'm an NLP master practitioner. You can do mirroring and visualization and timeline therapy and all the trendy stuff. But sometimes the power of the brain is huge and we can't overcome it. So there's another one called BDNF. So I'm going to touch on that. But there's the COMT one, and you say breakdown of excitatory neurotransmitters, such as epinephrine, which is a proper word for adrenaline, and norepinephrine. And then, that's me at 18, with a very slanty beret in the Royal Air Force. And then, there's me doing quite a dramatic video that I did on behalf of an ex-Royal Marine, looking at suicide in men, which I talk on, and particularly in the forces. The rates of suicide in men in the UK is huge. So we might look all fantastic and rock and roll on the outside, but maybe inside we're breaking down a little bit. But broken crayons still colour. We still make a difference. And we can heal if we get the right advice and the right care and the right empathy. And that was a really hard video to do. I got in quite an emotional state. But the guy that asked me to do it and raise the funding and stuff, when we were filming it, it was a section when I was in my living room and I had pills and a knife and stuff, just for the video. He couldn't watch it. He couldn't watch it because he's seen too many men and women, whereas an ex-Royal Marine, the predominant, kind of suicide risk, as I said, in men is huge. So talking about it and raising awareness, and the whole theme of that was, please speak up. The MAOA and MAOB are symbolic because these are genes. MAOA is known as the warrior gene. Higher pain threshold, gung-ho attitude, get it done anyway, no fear. Apparently I have that. I wouldn't say I'm particularly crazy or adrenaline junkie. Yes, I used to be a fairly accomplished skydiver. Why did I take up skydiving? Because I'm scared of heights. I won't clean out the gutters at home, but I'll jump out of an aeroplane at 14,000 feet. Now, that's putting some crazy trust in that backpack with a big hanky on my back. MAOB people are known as the warrior. That's the warrior gene. So you will get people that are just genetically more, come on, get it done. I don't care about the consequences. And the B people only think about the consequences in a negative way. And when you explain that to people, it empowers them. Because maybe they'll then do what I did with the scared of heights thing. And I'm still scared of heights. It didn't change at all. I jumped 83 times on my own. And every single time I drove into the drop zone, the airfield, every time my belly's going, my head's going, what are you doing? What are you doing? You proved it. Now what are you got to prove? You've got nothing to prove to anybody. You've done it. And I was like, now I'm going to do it again because I have to prove it to me. But you've also got to be sensible. So when my wife at the time was expecting Oscar, my oldest, I just sold all my stuff because then I have a responsibility to him. So poof, that was the end of skydiving, which is probably a wise thing. That is an adrenal test. And it's part of a bigger test called Dutch. It's nothing to do with the country. It stands for dry urine and total cortisol hormones. This is cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone made in the adrenals. Kind of unfair because we need it. It gives you your get up and go. In the morning you have something called a cortisol awakening response. Yeah, let's get out of bed. Let's start the day. And if you don't have that cortisol awakening response, which you'll see in a moment, you're like, Nah, I'd just stay in bed. So it peaks in the morning, but it shouldn't peak this much. This is overdrive. This is when you are overstimulated, hypersensitive, but doing it anyway, because this was a lady that stood with me PT and stuff, and after seeing this, she actually gave up her tennis career and became a coach, stayed in it because she had a passion and loved it. But I was like, you're driving yourself into the ground, because she was good, but she wasn't as amazingly talented as others, so she was training harder and longer and more frequently, and her body couldn't take it. But she was overstimulated. That's going to really deplete your body, literally, of nutrients. That, on the other hand, is what can happen. That's the ex-British cyclist. And because she naturally carried a bit more body weight when she was cycling, she was in the British team, she was told, eat less, because you need to lose some weight. Do more training, over the standard training, because you need to lose more weight. Now, I'll tell you, it's not rocket science. Eating less and doing more isn't a good balanced equation. And it burnt her out, and she never recovered. That test was about 4 or 5 years after she quit the sport. And to this day, we're still in touch, not very frequently, but if she does, she's moved to the country and got some horses. She says if she, does some work on the horses, 2 days running, she has to take a couple of days off. She's wiped. And that was the British cycling team. And their coaches and the authorities within that sporting establishment that we think is excellent and looks after athletes. The athletes are just a commodity. That's why so many of them come to me behind the scenes, away from their clubs and whatever. Anybody know Foxy? Like the ladies like Foxy? So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of people, and it's purely because these are considered manly men. But he's very open, whatever a manly man is. He's very open as an ex-Royal Marine and SBS, and he's on the telly and all that, but a great guy. And he was suicidal. And it hit him from nowhere. He just was like, whoa. And one time on a mission, they were going to rescue some people, and he literally just started crying. He was in a helicopter getting dropped in, and he was just like, well, I just want to go home to my mum. And that spooked him, because he was like, I've never thought like that. I'm a machine. And then one mission, he said that was just one too many. Just one too many. Exercise. You've all heard about exercise is good for us and the endorphins, which are temporary, but I'm going to show you how the long-term effects can be hugely profound. I'm very big now in going out, as Andy does, and love hill walking and bits and bobs, and I'm quite close to Malvern Hills, and last year I went over for the D-Day celebrations, because my granddad was part of D-Day as Royal Engineer, so I hiked 22 miles across the beaches, and I like getting outdoors, where traditionally for many, many, many years, I was all, in the gym and pumping myself up and looking all body beautiful, and as we get older, you go, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore. It really doesn't matter. But it is important that I work on myself, not to look great, but to feel good, and my long-term health and my thought processes. It clears my head when I get out of my house into nature. And there's lots of, if you're into the science of it, lots of, science and reasons why. But the one I want you to see, I don't know if my point is going to work from here, the BDNF, we're going to touch on that one. And this is very recent research. As I said, I'm very evidence-based, so I like to give you the latest findings. So this is just from a couple of months ago. And the governments, supposedly, that's a friend of mine. I used to go abroad every year speaking at summer schools on business about these kind of things and working with healthy eating while they're there. So within the workplace, outdoor meetings, walk and talk meetings. So Anna from Norway there used to run a Norwegian convention bureau based in Oslo. But the government said they were going to have all these things about free bike loans and cycle training and stuff, and this was just short of 3 years ago. I'm still waiting for it to happen. It's not happening, is it? Have you all seen these schemes where you get free bikes and ride around? No, in Birmingham you get the ones you pay for, and people dump them on the side of the road because they have no respect. But I don't know where. So it's all right having a token chat about it, but I tell you now, other people in the government especially are not going to do this for you. You've got to do it for yourself. And it shouldn't cost a lot of money. Buy a decent pair of shoes, not like these, right? Decent pair of walking shoes or boots or trainers, and it's real simple. You go left, right, repeat. And if you do it outdoors, then you've got the daylight coming in through the eyes, and then you've got that serotonin, which makes us feel content and kind of happy. It's not exactly happy. It is more of a content, whereas dopamine is more of a reward neurotransmitter hormone, so they all work slightly differently. But there's your BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Basically is regenerating brain cells, neuroplasticity. And you do that by learning new skills, concentrating on challenging tasks and daily activities. So years ago, the craze, and it's still popular, Sudoku and stuff, there's more updated research now saying doing the same kind of thing, like Sudoku or crosswords every day, it negates itself over a period of weeks. You've got to keep changing the stimulus. The one thing, by the way, that doesn't is reading, either by learning factual stuff, or if you're reading a novel, because I don't know if you do it, but I just lose myself. I'm there. I'm imagining myself in the story or wherever. So your imagination is getting fired up. And don't we all lose that somewhat as we grow up? And it's kind of stamped out of us. I watch my children, 8 and 13, play, and the imagination on them is unbelievable. And I absolutely love watching them and encourage that. And yet as adults, we're like, oh, shut up, behave. So if you're creative and you do music or you write and stuff, that is also brilliant for your BDNF. It's not about necessarily exercise. But intense exercise, by the way, is what drives it. So you probably know it as interval training. Get that heart rate up, come back and recover. Get that heart rate up, come back and recover, which is different to fat burning exercise, if you want to call it that, to get rid of your holiday pounds or your Christmas pounds. That's low steady state. So there's a lot of misinformation. So just to kind of recap, if you want to look, so this guy lost 5.5 stone in just over 7 months. He's 21. This guy's 51, both drug free, never took any kind of naughties. And this picture was taken in, Las Vegas. And how did they get so lean? Eating clean, not starving. Neither of them went zero carb, keto or anything. I'm not saying that's bad. It has its applications, but they didn't, because they need to preserve their muscle and be able to train. They need the energy for. But just walking in the morning, slow, steady state, nothing more than this. And again, how do I know what heart rate they should be at? Is because I send them to an expert, Dr. Gary Palmer, and they get measured. So you've been measured, mate. When I went down to, he had me down speaking to a whole regiment, and we did a live demonstration. And most people's fat burn heart rate is way lower. So I saw a guy yesterday, came down from Barnsley to see me. He was a student from 20 years ago. He was doing a natural bodybuilding show in July at the age of 53. And his fat burning heart rate is in the high 70s, low 80s. To the point where when he's in the gym, on the treadmill, people are walking past going, turn it up. That's not going to do anything. And he said, come and see me in 9 weeks and I'll show you a killer six-pack, because it works. Because I've done it for 30 years. I've done it on myself. I got my body fat down to 6%. And nothing more strenuous, cardio-wise, than a power walk for 45 minutes every morning. So it doesn't have to kill you. But for this BDNF or for cardiorespiratory fitness, and especially if you're doing sport, you do have to push it. Dietary modifications. Just the standard stuff you've been told, but then some of the stuff you've been told is nonsense, like low fat. How trendy was low fat in the 70s, 80s, 90s? And now we know that can actually lead to brain deterioration, because guess what? Your brain's mainly made of fat and water. So don't be paranoid about fat, but there are better types of fat. Your omega-3s, omega-6s, your essential fat. But I don't mind frying something. Okay, it's a ceramic frying pan, not a kind of Teflon. We won't even go into that. But I'm going to use a good quality extra virgin olive oil. It's actually a proper Italian one. It's in glass, not plastic, because I don't want the plastic leaching. It's green. It's not bright yellow because it hasn't been processed. But I don't own a microwave. And again, I'm not going to go into one's good, one's bad. But, you know, this scary stuff we're all exposed to every day. And that's the message I got going back to this guy that I said he's doing his exam next week, because he knows he's going to be with me all day. It's a long exam. And he's like, if I bring my food, have you got a microwave? This guy's been to my house like 30, 40 times. And I'm teaching him nutrition. And part of that nutrition course is potentially the dangers of microwaves. So I don't hold much hope for him in his exam. I haven't told him that today, but I will give him a call on the way back and go, read that section again. You've got to stick with it. Studies suggest it can take around 2 months before you'll notice a difference when you improve your diet. And how many of us follow a diet, which I don't like the word. I did ask if I can do the, if I could use the flip chart, but has anybody got any paper in front of them? Can you do me a favour? Can you just write in big letters in your journal today, or on the back of mine? Yeah, just write in big letters for me the word diet, capitals if you will. Just cross out the last one. Just cross out the last letter. Because that's what you... No, it's not that difficult. Die is what's left on the paper. Because that's what most people do, is slowly deteriorate cellular death if you don't feed your body. Because we have negative connotations with the word diet, that it's starvation. It's removal of the things we like. We have no more treats. See, language is important, if you remember I said at the start. So when I've got elite athletes that go, can I have a cheat meal? I go, no, because it's not cheating. I'm going to write it on your plan, and I want you to have it. I almost insist you have it. So let's talk about the things that might be the better choices. So when I got in great shape years ago, my choices were either, because I was eating with the students, either Wagamama's, a Nando's, or a mixed grill from the Indian on the way home with boiled rice, because I wanted protein, because I was a big lad back then and actually had some muscles which have all gone. But people would see me eating that and go, oh, that's not very clean. Is that your cheat meal? I go, no, it's not cheating, because I've decided I'm having that. I'm not cheating on a diet. It's built in. Because the negative connotations with that word cheat, you're setting yourself up for misery to start with. So language is important. Detail is important. And it takes time. Vitamin D. So genuinely, I would have loved to do this outside, because the importance of vitamin D, and I'll tell you now, I do a lot of blood testing. It can be done really simply, by the way. A finger prick test, £30, £35. The NHS actually do them, don't they, through the post. I'll give you a little bit of, is it ironic, is it hypocritical? Let me ask you which you choose. If you go to your GP or the hospital and you get vitamin D, it's actually 25-OHD is the measure, so it measures D2 and D3 hopefully, but you get your vitamin D measured. The GP will tell you, because it's in front of him on the screen, that anything over 50, listen to the word, is sufficient. Sufficient. Not good, certainly not optimal, sufficient. In that you won't get rickets. I don't want to be sufficient. I don't want to be well-being. I want to be optimal. So now you buy the finger prick test online from the NHS. That's a private company. So we're not even going to talk about that. The NHS. Wait a minute. Isn't the NHS what the doctor in the hospital just told us 50 is sufficient? Guess what the level is from the NHS? It's actually the lab is Sandwell and Dudley Hospital outside of Birmingham, up by me. Guess what the level is now that they recommend? All the way up to 220. The difference between 51 and 220 is huge, is it not? Because you pay 30 quid, now you're getting proper advice that's going to enhance your health. We need vitamin D, very important for the brain. Although we call it vitamin D, it's actually a pro-hormone. It makes your hormones, including your sex hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, bone density, loads of other stuff, and one of the most important nutrients for your immune system. So, when all the COVID stuff hit, I was all over social media going, oh, how cheap and easy accessible is vitamin D? Well, I'll tell you now, that 50 guideline the NHS at your GP, I'm a member of the Royal Society of Medicine, so I put a suit on and have a shave and try and look respectable and go to London and hang out with the consultants and doctors. And it was 11 years ago, August 2014, when they said the NHS guidelines are far too low. One, don't even waste money, NHS money, testing people. Assume they're deficient and tell them to take a supplement. That's not been applied. And two, the level 50 is far too low, make it 90. 11 years on, it's still not been implemented mainstream. The wheels move slow. Lose body fat, mitochondrial energy production and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And social enrichment. And I think that really is important. Really, really is important. And that's why coming to things like this for all of us and networking is absolutely fantastic. The C word is COVID. The World Health Organization are still looking at the data, and I'll tell you from looking at research through the Royal Society of Medicine, they're saying a lot of the issues around mental health is a slow burner. And over 10 years, the increase in issues around mental health and mental illness, they're saying COVID infection, and I don't want to say this to spook anyone, can actually cause issues with neurotransmitter production in the brain, but it's a slow burner. They're saying some people don't start noticing the unwanted negative side effects for maybe 3-4 years after infection. That's kind of scary. But it needs to be known. And it's known because it's published. Frank Bruno. Awesome man. I've met him a number of times. World heavyweight champion, a hero to the British public back in his day. Sectioned against his will by his own daughter. And they fell out for a long time. And then years later he realised, and there's been a recent documentary, that it probably saved his life. So please reach out. If some of you are, I teach first aid for mental health, there's lots of people here that do, so that's amazing. And it really tells you to look for some of the warning signs, but remember, you're not then a therapist. You know where to point people. And that's important, because people want to be the therapist, but unless you know what you're doing, there's obviously a lot of help with the NHS. But also, work on yourself. Speak to yourself with better language. Internal auditory dialogue. Now that's going to be influenced by external things, but in your brain you do have filters. And I'm going to show you how simple it is to filter. This is a demonstration for water. I've got Coke. I'm going to do some magic and then we're going to finish up. By the way, your handouts, you have an elastic band. Nothing in there, by the way, because it's important to be flexible, and sometimes we need to stretch ourselves, and sometimes you just need a nice cup of tea. So I'll put a tea bag in there for you as well. Coca-Cola. That's the negativity going on all around you, and that might be your partner, your kids, your friends, your family, your work. You filter it, comes out as water. I get much better reaction when I do this with the school kids. And just in case you think I've got something magic in there, it is Coke. You can control it. You have filters. You've got to choose to put them in place. Maybe do some graining techniques. Simple little things. It's just a distraction. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. If all that's going on in your brain, you can't think negative thoughts, because if you study things like NLP and psychology, the brain can generally handle 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information at once. And if you give it 15 bits of information, it can't think rubbish thoughts. Who knows what that is? Come on, somebody must remember the Beatles. All you need is love. That's oxytocin. Anybody know what oxytocin is? It's your love hormone. Either when you're getting shiggy, or you give birth. And that skin contact, I made sure with both of my sons, they were on my bare chest within minutes. First of all, go to mum, of course. But that skin to skin releases oxytocin, and you bond and fall in love. I don't want you all to fall in love with each other. But if you want to give each other a hug, that's cool. Because you know one of the best things about giving a hug? It's really difficult to give one without getting one back. And we're not very good at asking for hugs. So go and give somebody a hug and you're going to get one anyway. Colin McLaughlin, ex-SAS, captured, tortured, now talks about mental health because he had issues with it. These are guys, and Andy will, kind of back me up on this, that certainly within the military we put on a pedestal, and it's amazing. That's at a talk, and I know him, we were catching up afterwards, that was at a talk he gave with Frank Bruno. So you got the world heavyweight champion and a real tough cookie. He was one of the instructors, if you watch the SAS Who Dares Wins on the first series. But when they share some of the things, how vulnerable they were, it makes an impact. Internal auditory dialogue. Be careful what you say to yourself. And if you are giving yourself negative internal language, get outside, think about other things, put your headset on, watch. I tell you what I love to watch in the evening, to wind down. And I know I said I shouldn't be on a screen, but it's a bigger screen at distance, isn't so bad. Gogglebox. I love people watching. Gogglebox. I just find it fascinating because I love seeing, different people. There's the old Dalai Lama, who was honoured to see many years ago over 3 days in Nottingham. And all he did was giggle for 3 days. Such a happy man. But basically he's saying, take care of your health now, before it's too late. Your diet is everything you take in, what you breathe, what you drink. Hence why I've got the water filters. My boys take them to school, and at home I have a whole house filter, so I share in filtered water and everything. Again, just think about that chemical load, but what people say to you, use the filter to get rid of it so it doesn't become ingrained as part of you. I love a Scotch egg. I was born, Scotch egg. I love a Scotch egg as well. A Scotch pie. I was born in Glasgow. We all like a bit of junk food now and again. Don't beat yourself up over it, like I said, if it's your happy soul food. But if, the 80-20 rule, if you want to think of it that way, try and make the dominant intake of what you drink, what you breathe, what you hear, what you say, and what you eat. Try and make it healthy. There's your cup of tea in your little bag. It's just a funky way of giving you my leaflet, so then you've got my contact details. If you want to speak to me about stuff, if you want the slides, please get in touch. Cain's top 10 tips. So you've got the expanded version on the printer A4, so you've got some explanations. When I work with clients, it's all about explaining and empowering, not telling them what to do, telling them why and how and where and when. The detail makes a difference. Do sweat the small stuff. It took me ages to find a chain that was red, white and blue. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm a bit GB fitnessed up. But we do work better together. Thank you.